Welcome to the Nourishing Africa Entrepreneurs Nourishing Africa Instagram Live. Before we begin, we're going to be joined today by Aramide Abe, the founder and CEO of Naija Startups, and we look forward to having her on board. She is the founder and CEO of Naija Startups. When she is online, I kindly request that she tries to wave to ensure that we're able to connect with her. But in the meanwhile, while we wait for her to join us, just to give you an overview of Nourishing Africa and some of our exciting projects currently in the works, and we think it's important to share with our audience. We have a range of programs and tools and information on the hub and online for you as entrepreneurs and enthusiasts in the agriculture and food space to use to grow your business, to share with other enthusiasts and other entrepreneurs in the sector. To give you an update on some of the engagements that we're currently doing, we have a first Thursday for our East African members, as well as our users and those who would want to be members, where we come together to discuss key topics and issues as entrepreneurs in the sector, ways of improvement, as well as to know other people in your sector, know other people in your region, and find areas of collaboration. And we think that it's a great tool. And I just see that Aramide has logged on. If you could just request to join, and we will get started. We're very excited to have you today to discuss your entrepreneurial journey with us and to share key insights and motivate our audience to keep pushing through this sometimes very but rewarding journey. Very lonely but rewarding journey. So while we wait for her to get online, and that should be anytime soon, to give you an overview of some of the other aspects we have currently ongoing on the hub, we have the Ask an Expert segment, where each week we have an expert providing you with the opportunity to ask any question as it relates to the theme of the week. We've often seen that it's very hard as entrepreneurs to get your questions and particular questions answered as it relates to your business. Businesses are vastly different, and we all have different questions that need to be answered. So what we have created is a segment where you can ask your particular and unique questions to experts from around the world who will be able to give you quick and direct answers. So I highly recommend you go to nourishingaafrica.com/ask an expert. We have a range of other tools. Aramide, I think you might be... Okay, got it. So she will be joining us shortly. I think we're having some connection. It's just connecting.
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. I don't know if it's echoing. Can you hear me though?
I can hear you quite well.
Okay. As long as the sound is fine.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you continue to do and to help our community of entrepreneurs. But before we begin, the first question I'd like to ask is just tell us a bit about Naija Startups. How did you get started? What led you venture on this journey?
Okay, so Naija Startups is an entrepreneur support organization and a virtual hub for businesses, for SMEs and startups. And we have our mission is to empower entrepreneurs to build sustainable businesses on the continent. We started around about 2015, 2016, but that wasn't why we started at the time. At the time, we realized that there was just a lot of businesses doing amazing things, a lot of talent on the continent, and there wasn't a lot of platforms showcasing that. So even with Google at the time, you couldn't find some of these businesses on there. So the whole idea was, okay, why don't we set up this sort of directory that would help us, at least have businesses on there, and then maybe we can leverage digital media to publicize and showcase the talent. But along the way, as we started doing that and growing in traction and numbers, people started asking us, okay, so what do you do for businesses? Do you do this? Do you do that? So very quickly, we started listening and understanding what entrepreneurs are looking for and what they need. And so, of course, we kind of tweaked our model, and now we're a hub. So up until early this year, we had been a virtual hub. Not Virtual hubs are not necessarily popular. Communities are, but hubs are typically, physical. You go and then, you go into a hub and there's all sorts of activity. So it's interesting sort of like positioning ourselves. But then since COVID and the pandemic, it's been interesting because now people realize that there's a need for virtual hubs and we've seen a lot of growth. So that's what we do. The key things that we focus on are structure, funding, and then capability building for the entrepreneurs themselves.
That's wonderful. Before I go on, I just want to inform our audience that they can ask questions using the questions tool, and we will get to them further on in this discussion. But the next question I have is, when you started, you did so on Instagram, as opposed to the traditional models. Why did you choose that?
So, I'm just going to sort of I think there's a lot of noise in the background. I'm trying to figure out what that is. Just a second, please. Okay, I think I know. 1 sec. So, basically with directories, which is what we wanted to start with, conventional models of setting directories up or what we had seen from our market research was we would find and companies hire canvassers and they would go out and gather data. But with those companies, we realized that they actually very quickly ran out of business because you need funds to keep all these employees on your payroll. If you're not making that much money, you can easily just fold up. And we saw a few companies do that. So we thought, okay, why don't we leverage another model where we're not actually hiring canvassers to go out and, get information? Can we not use a different model where we attract these SMEs and startups to us and then get their information by giving them something in return, which is the freemium model? So that's what we employed. And very quickly, we started growing at almost no cost at all. So that was the idea behind that.
Okay, that's great. And you have a background in the banking industry. Did this have any impact on how you decided or what your model was moving forward? How did this impact your previous journey, impact the way you started Naija Startup?
Okay, so my previous journey was in strategy in banking across Africa. So even with what we're doing, I always had the filter and the mindset to be Africa focused. So right from the very beginning, we were Africa focused, we still are. And also just in terms of thinking about how to enter the different markets, that was another thing. So I guess the strategic thinking helped from that angle. And then, just even running a business, being able to structure things, have the processes in place, I think that experience helped me as well.
And when or why did you choose corporate 9 to 5, or in Nigeria, it's rarely 9 to 5, but to go and...
Good question. Yeah, good question. So it was just after, I had set up a business before I went to business school about 10 years before. And so I've always had a flair to run businesses or set up tech companies. It was a tech company as well, an SMS marketing platform, e-commerce, for SMEs as well. So I've always kind of been in that area. But when I was working in banking, I think there was a whole decision about me moving to Germany for a role. And I thought, okay, at this point, I don't think I want to see I don't see myself in Germany. So I thought, okay, well, and then I was based in Lome in Togo. I wasn't based in Nigeria. So I moved back to Nigeria, not taking that opportunity. But then I started working in consulting. So while I was doing that, the idea came along. And I just thought, okay, I'm just going to run with this as opposed to going back into full time. I thought, okay, well, let's try and see what this is like. And so far, it's been a wild journey, but it's been worth it.
Okay, and tell us a bit about some of the challenges you faced in the beginning when you decided that this is what you wanted to do.
So I think one of the whole thing is that whole decision making part of it, which is if you know you want to do this, then own it. And if you have certain things like you kind of feel like you still want to be 9 to 5, you're not sure, getting that validation sometimes is tricky for entrepreneurs where, okay, so who's cheering you on, right? So when you embark on this, who is going to be cheerleading you while you're doing it? And when you don't have the cheering on, sometimes it's difficult. So I think for me, because I came from a family of 9 to 5ers, I mean, the support was there generally, but I don't know that it was like, it wasn't, and I mean, I don't fault because anyone, if you're trying something new, people will definitely support you, but it wouldn't be as, okay, look, this is the thing. No one is really clear as to where you're going. So it's really important to have the clear vision. And so for me, it was still fuzzy, but along the way, it became crystal clear. So that thing about knowing, having your why and knowing it, and then treading that path is very important. So one of the challenges to your point or to your question, I would say is, just clarity. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs still struggle with that, where so they have some service that they want to offer or a product, but then they still need some clarity, and you can get clarity. So that was one thing. Another thing was, of course, as we all know, there's the whole startup cost. Fortunately for us, we're tech-enabled online, so we didn't really need that much. Having said that, if I didn't have savings in banking, maintaining sort of like just living as an entrepreneur would have been difficult, or savings from my banking role rather. So I think, again, putting some money aside is important. And then so I've spoken about vision, and then I guess that flows into the support system thing, where you always need a support system as an entrepreneur. And then we're finding that now that it's easier for people to go into business. It wasn't always as trendy being an entrepreneur. So back in the day, it would have been really difficult to get the support that you would need in terms of similar people doing the same thing. But now you find that there's more people like that, so it's not so bad. You can join communities like ours, like yours, where you're agri-focused. So yeah, so those are the main things.
And you had then previously stated that you came from a family of 95s, and I see that we have a question about what motivates you. Based on, we know that it's really important that you have an ecosystem, people that understand what you're going
through. I'm gonna shut the sliding door where the noise is coming from, but go on.
So what motivated you to continue?
Okay, so just a sec. Finally. Okay. So what motivated me to carry on? I think knowing your why is key. So knowing why you want to do something is very key. And then also just because typically when you start, you know that you want to do something, you may not have it all figured out, but you, in your heart of hearts, you know that that's what you're meant to do, sort of. Maybe it doesn't happen with everyone, but for me, I kind of knew, right? So even though I was tempted many times to just, okay, just get a job, and I still knew that I wouldn't really be entirely fulfilled. So I think the point of fulfillment comes in, but then, you have to be practical about just life and, all the other things that come with that. So yeah. So I guess for me, it was my why, knowing your why. And I know there's a book on that, which is, know your why, know what drives you, know, I guess, your purpose and all those things.
And I think what you're leading to is the idea of self-motivation and not relying on your ecosystem alone to keep you going.
But even self-motivation is not easy, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not every day that it's pleasant. It's difficult. So where do you, yeah, I guess even for me, I think then it's more than even just me. There's a whole level of where do you get your inspiration from? Could it be mentorship? Could it be spirituality? Whatever it is, right? So you need those things. And I find that entrepreneurs more so because it's just so challenging. You're juggling so many different things mentally as well. It's not like there's a lot of structure. So more than anyone, I think entrepreneurs need that support mentally, and then just, motivation and inspiration from a place or a source, right?
And I just want to remind our audience that they could ask their questions using the question function or commenting below, and we'll get to it through the course of this session. But one thing I would like to move slightly to Naija Startups, and just a quick discussion as to what it is you do and how you are empowering entrepreneurs through this organization.
Yeah, so like I said before, we are an entrepreneur support organization and a virtual hub for SMEs, which means that we are a one-stop shop for businesses essentially. But we are sector and stage agnostic. That means any type of entrepreneur can come in, and then whatever they need, our role is to connect them with what they need as a hub. So not necessarily being the ones providing those set services per se, but being able to connect them with shared service providers if they need, or even investment, introduction to investors, or for some of them, they want maybe publicity for themselves as personal brands or for their businesses. So it's been quite interesting because we find that people come in for different things. And it's important not to be everything to everyone, but as a hub, if you're able to form strong partnerships, you don't have to be the one delivering, but then you can connect people. So I guess connecting is our core. And then on the back of that, we leverage digital content very much. And that's even how we grew anyway, on social media, and then of course off social media as well. So content, which is cutting edge, which is useful, beneficial, the community aspect, and then referrals. So in terms of revenue, it's more advertising through content, commission and referrals, and even success fees for introduction to investors, and also community.
That's wonderful. And in your experience and through your line of work, what do you think the biggest challenge is for these entrepreneurs when they're trying to start up, when they're trying to scale?
So a lot of them say funding, but I think the first is definitely structure. Even the ones who are 5, 7-year-olds find that structure is still a thing that they haven't all figured out. Some, it's not until absolutely when they're getting very structured funding that they realize through the due diligence that they're missing certain elements, things like corporate governance, even the org structure and the org design. A lot of the time, it's not optimal, or it's not where it should be. It's not to say that it's bad. It's just at least it's important for entrepreneurs to know where the gaps are. So I think structure is one thing. Talent is another major thing that we all suffer from, especially in these parts, right? So hiring the right talent, finding the right talent. I mean, there's still very good talent out there, but then there's issue of, the cost of the talent as a startup. So there are different ways to sort of like go around that, whether it's through, getting someone who's skilled at something to offer their services in exchange for equity, or just all sorts of, hybrid ways. But talent is another major thing. And then, of course, funding, which is the thing that a lot of people say. Of course, it's still, we're nowhere where we should be in terms of just, the availability of funds. Investors are not always well versed in terms of investing itself. So it's sometimes quite tricky. And then just the general thing, I think I was chatting with someone now and he said to me, well, creative entrepreneurs don't really have a lot of support like tech. Obviously, there's money in tech, there's money in agriculture, but where it's like creative entrepreneurship, where do they go? So there's still a lot of issues that kind of need looking at. And right now, people look to the government because that's the only sort of like, okay, we fall back on the government. But even then, there's, the government is still working through everything. So there's opportunities for people to consider some of these things as, okay, let's see how we can support this ecosystem or that ecosystem.
And we have a question here from Ndidi Ununeli, who's asked, how has your business been affected by COVID-19? And how were you able to pivot or modify the services that you offered prior to the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak?
So it has affected us, but positively, interestingly, not negatively, where because a lot of people are now home or virtual, need to leverage more virtual tools or virtual communities. We've seen, I think, 3x growth. Last I checked, For us, it's now looking at our Pan-African expansion and speeding that, bringing that forward very quickly, as opposed to, I think we had thought maybe next year we'll look at going into other countries like Rwanda and Cote d'Ivoire. But we're literally looking at that now. We're already beginning to do some work there just to see how that will happen. So it has impacted us. But I think as any business as well, there's a whole thing around talent as well. So it's always nice. Well, I mean, there are some roles where you can hire virtually for, but there are one or two where you still want to have interviews in person. And during the lockdown, when we couldn't go do anything, we couldn't have any interviews. But that's not a major thing because, again, we can still do things virtually. So I'd say not so much because we've always been virtual. It's only now even accelerated and put to the fore what we do. More people know about what we do. More people are joining the membership, which is interestingly now attracting people even in 9 to 5, even in public sector, because they're looking for a place to network with like-minded individuals. So it's been quite interesting just seeing how our members club, which is a bit smaller than the broad base of SMEs, is taking shape.
That's wonderful. And from your work with these entrepreneurs, what do you think, or how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected their businesses? And the ones that have been able to thrive during this period, what have they done differently?
Okay, so I'll definitely start with those ones. The ones who have been able to thrive have worked on their processes and explored other supply chain sources or ways to just bypass the conventional supply chain approaches. Then some of them have even been able to access opportunities internationally because now there's borders opening up due to the whole virtual life and this normal that we're now seeing and embracing. Then and then finally, like I said, with regards to structure and processes, that has helped with operations for them. So they've been able to take a step back and see, okay, so why are we doing this way? Do we really need to do this way? And then I think also a lot of learning because there's been a ton of webinars and some may say that that's exhausting, but I think entrepreneurs have been able to really benefit from a lot of business leaders that they wouldn't have been able to reach normally. So they're building skills like every single day, just learning new things, instituting corporate governance structures and things like that. So that's been good. On the flip side, where we have, for example, in our community, we have people in the beauty businesses, people in travel and tourism. For a long time, they just had no business. There's someone who was making so much money from Dubai visas, for example, and just had no business, right? So for him, he decided, look, I'm just going to look at what other skills I have. I used to work in banking. I used to trade. Maybe I'll start doing some trading in crude, or I can't remember what it was, and he started doing that. So even for the ones who had no business and everything was literally shut down, they thought, okay, so what are the other opportunities? What can I do in this time? And so I think that's something to say, to speak about, which is, just seeing the opportunity even where there's crisis.
Oh, that's amazing. And in terms of, before we get to the questions, and I would ask that if our audience has questions or have questions, please write them down in the comment section or using the questions functionality. But my last question would be, what advice would you have for entrepreneurs right now?
Good question. So, a lot of things. I always have a lot of things to say, but I think right now, particularly where we are, where the world is going and just where businesses are going, especially our very unique environments in Africa, I'd definitely say that entrepreneurs need to learn this whole thing about adaptability because, yes, we had the COVID pandemic, the lockdown, everything. There's all the talk about the next wave or whatnot. Hopefully there wouldn't be, I don't know. But then there's just so much uncertainty. So with uncertainty comes just all sorts of things. And in Africa, it's always quite interesting where policies are instituted almost immediately, like you don't even get a lot of notice. So what does that mean, and what can that mean for you? In Lagos, where we are, for example, we have one of the major bridges being shut down or part of it is being shut down in a few days, and we didn't have much notice. What does that mean for business? So I think that ability to be nimble and adaptable is the thing that would really help entrepreneurs in general, more than the hard skills or the hard things that you need to know, which you do need to know, and you can always learn and look up and research. But the actual soft adaptability type skills are very crucial. And then, of course, just having a strong support system, whatever that is for the entrepreneur.
Amazing. And I know we're wrapping up soon, but before we do, I'd love for people to ask any questions that they might have. I had previously seen a question about Nourishing Africa. And just to give a brief overview of what we do, we are a digital platform similar to Naija Startups, but we are strictly for agriculture and food entrepreneurs. And the idea of what we're trying to do is have or create a home for agri-food entrepreneurs across Africa to help them scale their businesses. And this ranges in services and products from data and innovation to key programs such as Ask an Expert, which essentially helps the entrepreneur ask questions to leading experts as it relates to your business. And I would employ everyone to go to nourishingafrica.com. It's very easily user-friendly. You'll be able to access the information and tools needed to help you grow your business.
Thanks for that as well. I'm definitely going to go, and I went on a few weeks ago, but I'm going to go back there as well because I think there's also a lot to learn. Thanks for the info.
And then we have one more comment. The UK Guardian article noted that 8 out of 10 startups in Africa were run by non-Africans. What can we do to create a level playing field and change this reality?
You know, when you get data, it's always interesting because a lot of the time it's anchored on something, right? So I think maybe this article was speaking to the number of startups who had successfully raised funding, and a lot of that comes out of Kenya. And when you look at Kenya in East Africa, yes, a lot of the tech startups are actually co-owned by non-African founders. So the question is, how can African founders access non-African capital, because a lot of the capital is coming from the West, right? So these are the conversations that we need to have. But also, I think then for the Africans who are here, we need to start looking at how we can build wealth on our continent, for our continent. So for those who have the resources, I think it's for them to be able to, or to begin to learn more about investing in companies and not to be afraid, because a lot of people just want to put their money in bank accounts and savings and fixed deposits, not because it's just because they just don't understand, or they're afraid and worried. But if people are more comfortable understanding that, there's a bigger picture here, and also you can build wealth and generate wealth, you can build cities, then, it's just a different mindset. So I think there's a lot to be done. So globally, invest more in Africa and in Africans, but also locally as well. Investors and people who have the ability to invest should begin to do more.
Okay. Thank you so much, Aramide Abe, for joining us today. We truly appreciate your insights and the words of wisdom, as well as the experiences that you shared with us today.
Thank you. And sorry about the noise earlier.
Problem. It's live. It happens. Thank you. Audience, please note that next week we will be on Twitter, having a Twitter chat with an entrepreneur, leading entrepreneur in the landscape. And the week after that, we'll be back, same time, same place, Instagram Live. We look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye.